When on board H.M.S. Beagle as naturalist, I was struck with certain facts in the distribution of the inhabitants of South America.
Thus begins Charles Darwin's The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, a book that has changed the way humans understand the world and our place in it.
Evolution has nothing to do with what the organisms might want. It has to do with what tools they have available, and it has to do with what pressure is put on that population by nature itself.
In 2009, people around the globe are celebrating the Year of Darwin, the 200th anniversary of the birth of Charles Darwin, and the 150th anniversary of his landmark book. William McComas, science education professor at the University of Arkansas, has visited the Galapagos Islands 5 times and has photographed the creatures that Darwin had observed.
By the time Darwin got to the Galapagos Islands, he was at the end of his 5-year voyage. I think he had less than a year of travel left. So he'd been 4 years on the seas already and traveling extensively in South America. He'd visited other islands. He was a pattern-seeking guy. I mean, he was collecting data in a really interesting fashion, trying hard in some sense not to jump to conclusions.
It's clear that many of the animals living on the Galapagos Islands did not originate there, but carried the traits necessary to survive and for their progeny ultimately to evolve into new forms.
At some point in the distant past, on rafts of vegetation washing off from the shore of South America, were these hapless tropical iguanas that got washed out to the Galapagos Islands. Evolution took these iguanas in 2 different directions. The iguanas evolved for life on land in one case, they're called the land iguanas, and the marine iguanas are the ones that developed this amazing ability to hold their breath for long periods of time in very cold water and feed on algae. The tortoises are as interesting a story and as clear a story about evolution as is told by the iguanas. Those that lived on the wet islands, they were able to feed on the ground. Their shell shape is very much like an Arkansas box tortoise, just a lot bigger. If the tortoises ended up in a much more hostile environment where food was harder to find on the ground, this is where evolution took the tortoises in sort of 2 directions at the same time. They did become larger, and at the same time they developed a very interesting flanging on their shells. The reason that this was an advantage to the tortoise is that the food sources were higher up.
Over the 10 years after his return to England, Darwin considered what he had found, conferred with other scientists, and in 1859 published Origin of Species. In his last sentence, he uses the word evolved for the first time in the book.
There is a grandeur in this view of life, in which endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved.